Are you ready to move to Sioux Falls? Welcome back to another episode of Move to Sioux Falls. Today we got to talk with Bob Mundt, the president and CEO of the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. We got to discuss Economics 101, also why the city of Sioux Falls is expanding, and the inside scoops on a couple other things. So stay tuned for more and put in the comments what you liked about the episode. So Bob Mundt, president and CEO of the Development Foundation here in Sioux Falls.
Correct.
I got that right?
Correct.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure that I got that right because, you know, this is a big deal. You're part of the Development Foundation, or like how Sioux Falls is like growing and how it's moving. So we're here on the set, Move to Sioux Falls. Like I kind of was telling you off stage, that Move to Sioux Falls was really just like set up to tell people about the Sioux Falls community, not just like my real estate business that I like. People always are like, hey, can you buy with me? Can you sell with me? They do this like cold call, car salesman stuff. Not kind of what I wanted to do. Kind of wanted to like show people the community of Sioux Falls. So that's why we're here in a Sodak Stays property. So we'll start with some HitFire questions. First one, super easy. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Inwood, Iowa, which is a community about 20 miles outside of Sioux Falls on the Iowa side of the border.
Okay, cool. Do you have family? How many kids? Married?
I do. I'm married. I have 3 children. They're all grown and making a living on their own. I have 1 grandson, and so that kind of makes up my immediate family. And then my extended family is, of course, still down in Inwood and Larchwood and some of those areas.
Cool. That's awesome. What's your favorite thing to do in Sioux Falls?
I love the life after hours.
Okay.
Right? So I like to go out to the Levitt Pavilion. I love to go out to shows and those types of things at the Pavilion Arts Center, things like that.
Cool.
We do a lot of biking, a lot of hiking, those types of things, and we just find a lot of opportunities to do that.
Okay, awesome. Well, you know what? No one's given like the 5-step answer to the like off hours, so I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Who would you say you call the most?
I probably call my brother and my mom the most, quite frankly. Just my mom's in a nursing home, so we talk a lot. But I also call my friends and family.
Okay, cool. What's the last best movie you've seen at a theater? I know COVID kind of changed the game, so
I'd have to say Top Gun Maverick's the last one I've seen in the theater. Yeah.
Hey, that was a good one. So they did a good job with the sequel, I think.
I thought they did too.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Move to Sioux Falls. Your support means a lot to us. Make sure to follow and subscribe at Move to Sioux Falls to stay up with the latest content. You grew up in Inwood, Iowa. How'd you land in Sioux Falls, South Dakota? I know it's pretty much like 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away, but you know, was it like a slow burn progress, or was it like you moved around from place to place, or was it like, hey, I'm in Inwood and I'm moving to Sioux Falls?
No, we moved around from place to place. I mean, I left Inwood in 1979 and went to college.
Okay.
And from that point on, I kind of moved around the Midwest into economic development and chamber jobs around the Midwest. And in 2018, I got the opportunity to come back to Sioux Falls, and knowing Sioux Falls the way I did, and the progress that they had made over the years and the great things that I saw happening in Sioux Falls. I had always kind of had my eye on Sioux Falls as a place where I might want to end up. And this opportunity came up, and I jumped on it, and I was fortunate enough to get the job.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay, so job brought you here, CEO and president. So I need to know like the distinction, like why are like some companies, they're like, hey, you're the CEO, but there's no president. And then they're like, hey, you're the president, there's no CEO. And then like some companies combine them. Do you know why that is, that combination?
So the president CEO position title is really, the president is kind of the leader of the group. They really set the vision, set the tone, those types of things. And the CEO is actually the chief executive officer, running the staff, communicating with the staff, those types of things. So a lot of times the president doesn't necessarily manage the staff, but the CEO does. And so I do both. Okay,
cool. I always wanted to know that distinction, because when I fill out like my form to become an LLC, I'm like, okay, am I the CEO? Am I the president? I feel like I'm both, like a co-owner, owner, right? Like there's all these different terms. So I'm glad you kind of cleared that little bit up for us. Sioux Falls is always growing. I feel like every like 2-3 years, like someone comes in, they're like, oh man, Sioux Falls has got 2 or 3 new things out here. Can you kind of give us like behind the curtain, like some of the things that might be coming up that people don't know about yet? Or is it all like, I can't tell you yet?
I mean, there's a lot of things I can't tell you, but I can tell you that we're going to continue to grow.
Okay.
We have Foundation Park, which is a large industrial park kind of on the northwest corner of Sioux Falls that we manage and sell property in. And so we've got a very active land sales docket right now.
Okay.
So we've got people looking at ground. We've got a couple of options out there that we look to close on here in the next 3 to 6 months. And so we're going to see a lot of activity continuing out there in that region. And then we've got some activity kind of on the northeast side too in a park that we own. And so we're continuing to push land, to market land, to sell land. And so we're excited about what the future's holding.
Now, you talk about land. I just had an interview with Jeremy Brown a couple of weeks ago, probably like a month ago now, maybe 2. He talked about like subdividing and that it's like kind of a hard process with the city. Is that like going to change in the future where it's like easier to subdivide, sell land? I know like some of these farmers on the outskirts of town are starting to be like, hey, we're getting out of the industry, we're retiring, and we're seeing these acreages kind of come up. Do you foresee any of these like subdivide process becoming easier within the city soon?
So we deal in industrial property.
Okay.
And so we deal in large scale industrial property. So really anything over 20 acres.
Okay.
And when we buy ground, we buy it in 200 and 300 acre chunks.
Okay.
So that we can then develop that ground and then turn around and sell that to industrial users. And so the commercial markets and the residential markets, I'm not real familiar with.
Okay.
And so as we're looking at expanding Sioux Falls, I know that the zoning's becoming more and more of an issue. That whole question of do we subdivide, do we not subdivide, do we allow acreages? Those are all conversations that are happening at the planning and zoning level.
Okay.
And we don't have a lot to do with that. We pretty much focus on the industrial properties.
Okay. And are those industrial properties, like you buy 300 acres, do you usually sell all 300 acres, or are you usually subdividing out to, a couple of different tenants or
the goal is to sell the full 300 acres, at some point in time. But sometimes when you have a user that may only want 100 acres, then we have to subdivide that, right? And so we do what's called platting.
Okay.
So we plat those into whatever acreages that they need. And again, we don't go much lower than 20 acres just because we don't want to compete with, the commercial brokers that are trying to sell that kind of stuff and the developers that are in town. So we really try to stick with those companies that are looking at larger scale developments. And then again, we subdivide if we have to, but we like to sell the whole property. It's just cheaper to do it that way.
Cool. So Sioux Falls is growing. Where do you see Sioux Falls growing business development wise? Like, you're part of the Development Foundation. I think you guys usually have a vision for like the next, 10 years, 20 years, right? Like, what's the vision to grow Sioux Falls in the, in the future?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple answers to that question. I guess the first one is, I think from an industrial development perspective, probably northwest.
Okay.
Towards the interstates and kind of north and west, still utilizing the interstates because of the transportation networks and things like that. I think residentially, we're probably looking more straight west of Sioux Falls, and there's a lot of development out there now. It's going to continue to go west. We see a fair amount of development residentially on the kind of the southeast corner of Sioux Falls. And then when you go northeast, you're kind of running into Brandon. And when you go southwest, you're kind of running into T. And so those boundaries are starting to blur a little bit from a residential perspective. But I would also tell you then that, downtown is really becoming a lot more vibrant than it ever has been. And so we're starting to see a lot more demand for inner city type housing downtown, making use of our active downtown and the things we're doing there. So we're seeing a lot of apartments and condos and those types of things in the downtown area. As well as, some redevelopment. So looking at some of the older areas of Sioux Falls that maybe need, a little bit of a facelift or something like that, taking a look at how can we either redevelop or reimagine kind of what's there now to kind of fit in with what's coming.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like even like, have you eaten at the Perch yet?
I have not.
Okay, that place, you got to check it out.
Okay.
It's really cool. I love how I think it was already a building that was a grocery store, and then it had some offices up top. I think like utilizing like a multi-use property kind of like that. Like I seen one in McKenna Park that I was like, I could turn this into a little bit of a restaurant with like some like 2 different apartments on top, right? Like I think we could use a little bit more of those within the community, and I think we're seeing that slowly trickle in. So
I think you'll see that a lot in the downtown, kind of a mixed use concept. If you look at the Steel District, you look at Sharapa, how they're developing into that mixed use where they've got commercial on the first floors. They maybe have some residential apartment units, those types of things, maybe on the next 4 or 5 floors. And then the top ones are the condos, right, where you can buy those. You have the view of the city. You'll see a lot more of that, I think, coming up. They just made the announcement on the Rail Yard Flats, new one down there that Jay Christensen is doing. And so you're going to see more of that coming. And I think, that's kind of the trend of the future.
Good. That all good stuff to know why Sioux Falls is growing. So what's been the best project to work on since you've been a part of the Development Foundation?
Well, the Amazon project was fun. To work on, when someone comes to the table and they want 80 acres and they're going to, and we don't know who it is until the very end. And we have project code names that we get. And so we kind of know the parameters of what they want.
It's all hush hush.
It's all kind of hush hush because nobody wants to know. And, being traded on the stock exchanges, any little blip could send your stock either, falling or upping. And so, we are, hold that in confidence. And so when they tell us we can let it out of the bag, we do. And so that was a fun project to deal with, just such a large scale, large company. But really to me, any company is fun because you get in the very early stages of their development. You have to work with them on the land and kind of the incentives and things like that. So we have a lot of fun doing that.
That's awesome. I love 1-day shipping. So
yeah, I do too. So do my kids.
Yeah, right. So brick and mortar is kind of like, I feel like brick and mortar is going away a little bit, but it's kind of making a resurgence too. Like it's like it kind of like with COVID, it's like we swung way to one way and now we're kind of swinging back to more of a equilibrium. But I feel like it accelerated who wanted to be in like a virtual or remote space. So it's kind of nice to know like that, there is a new way of doing things as well. Have you seen like a lot of changes since COVID? Like what's kind of changed with the Development Foundation? Not, I wouldn't say like within like hybrid work, say, but like the clients that you're seeing come, are they like, hey, we're moving to South Dakota because there's no state income tax, or like there's less corporate tax? Are you seeing like a little bit of that, or is it something different that's coming from like clients that you're seeing?
We're seeing some of that. A lot of that is driven by logistics. Right. And are they close enough to their clients and to their suppliers? So when you look at Amazon, they have a very sophisticated method of looking at where do they put their sites. And so we're seeing more distribution and warehousing. So when you think of ordering stuff online, those products still have to come from somewhere. And so most likely they're not going to come direct from the company. They're going to come from one of those distribution facilities like Amazon. And so we're seeing a need for distribution, warehousing. And one of the things that plays right into that is with COVID, before that, we used to have kind of that just-in-time inventory deal where nobody had their inventory on site. Well, during Amazon and during the pandemic and during the shipping crisis, nobody had product and nobody had raw product to manufacture. And so we're seeing, companies wanting to have their product right on site so that they can draw from that now, and they don't have to rely on someone in Ohio to send them their raw materials. So we're seeing a lot of warehousing that's popping up because they want to store 2 or 3 or 4 weeks worth of raw product so that they don't have to affect their production.
Because I could see how the domino effect works now. I was like, okay, so let's say it gets manufactured overseas, they ship it to a warehouse in Ohio. They might be stocked for their time for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then but if we need more, they would ship it over. Now it works differently where we have our own distribution center, and so more of those are popping up. And I'm just connecting the dots here a little bit. It works out well that we're on I-29 and 90, I would say.
It does very well, yes.
So that's part of the reason for the boom. So we've been like always on I-29 and 90. Is it just because people actually now know like, oh, Sioux Falls, South Dakota is actually a place on the map? Or
Yeah, well, and to go back to that, I think a little bit of that too was the trucking industry, right?
Okay.
So the trucking industry really was overburdened, during and after the pandemic, and
Okay.
so shipping the product was more difficult, right? So
Yep.
again, it would take you anywhere from 5 to 10 days to get your raw materials, and so that just didn't set well in a production process. So again, that just-in-time inventory has now become, I want it on site.
Yep.
Right. So we see that. I think Interstate 29 and 90 play a huge role in our ability to attract some of those. I think the fact that we're on a major rail line with Burlington Northern Santa Fe, we have a decent airport that can bring in product from an air perspective. And so I think we have a lot of advantages when it comes to distribution and looking at the area around us.
Yeah. And I know Carl Zalstra was saying how we are expanding the airport. It might be better to just keep expanding it because as we're growing. So, yeah. Do you know on like what's going on with the rail yard right now? I mean, you just talked about it a little bit, but now we see all that development happening. Is there less distribution coming by train then, and there's more trucking? Is that kind of like the route that most people are going now?
It depends on your product.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
if you've got the large pieces of equipment, the large products, high volume types of product, things like that, those are probably more efficient on rail.
Okay.
And so you rail them into a rail yard or a distribution area, and then truck it from there.
For sure.
But I think we're seeing a tremendous growth in really both those industries with the trucks, especially. We can't seem to find enough truck drivers and, things like that. So I think people are finding alternate ways to get their product. And again, some of that is just warehousing it right on site. So trucking is I think a good industry to be in these days. And I think rail will continue to prosper as long as we have large volumes of things to ship.
Awesome. I feel like I was in an economics 101 class right there. Like it was great because I feel like we don't get enough of this. Is like, hey, why behind the curtain, why is Sioux Falls growing? And I feel like you did a really good job just like laying it out in layman terms. If someone was going to move here, what would you tell them like why they should move here? Like what would you say?
Yeah. Are you a company or an individual?
Let's go with the individual right now. So
the number one thing I would tell people is the quality of life that we have here. I mean, we're a bigger city, but we're still a small town, right?
Yeah.
We can get places, when we need to. We don't have a lot of traffic jams as compared to some of the bigger cities. Our quality of life, we have the amenities of a big city. Without necessarily all the issues of a big city.
For sure.
As we continue to grow, though, I mean, we're gonna look at some of those issues and how do we keep those from happening in our city, and how do we make sure we really nip them in the bud right now before they start to be big problems. And so we're looking at that right now. I mean, we're pushing 300,000 here in the metro. And so I think we need to start looking at those. But the quality of life here is still really good, and we can get really anywhere in the country relatively easily. And again, just, you can drive home every night knowing that you did a good day's work.
Yeah. Crazy. 300,000 we're pushing. I think when I was in college, which was almost 10 years ago now, which seems crazy.
Yeah.
I think we were at like we were under 250. It was like, the neighboring areas, we had 250. So.
Oh, when I grew up, we were at like 100.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I think there's a stat like Sioux Falls and Sioux City were at the same population in 2001, and like Sioux City's grown by like 1%, maybe not even.
Right.
And like Sioux Falls has grown by like over 100%. So
yeah. Well, there's a book out there called A Tale of Two Cities.
Okay.
And you can read that, and it really lays the groundwork for why we did what we did, or why we are where we are.
Gotcha.
Versus what Sioux City has done. And again, it's an author that wrote it, so they have some different perspectives.
Yeah.
But I lived in Sioux City for 5 years too. I have nothing bad to say about Sioux City. I think it's a great community. I think they're doing the things that they can and need to do. But I've seen some great things happen in Sioux City as well. It's just that they're not growing quite as fast as we are.
I gotta say though, if you were there during the construction on the highway on 29, I want to know like Why did it take so long? I felt like it was there for like 5 to like 10 years. Do you know why it is just like tax, like budget issues? Or
I think, whenever you're dealing with public and especially national funding,
For sure.
It's just tough to get those allocations, and there's so many restrictions and requirements.
For sure.
Plus, when you redesign a major interstate going through the middle of your city like that, that's a big deal. I mean, I came here from Omaha, and that project in Omaha, if you've ever been down there and seen what they've done down there. I mean, that started in 1992, and it's still under construction now.
Wow.
So, I mean, 30 years later, they're still finishing up some of the final phases of that. So it takes a long time.
Sioux Falls will hit some of those snags, I feel like, soon, right?
It will. And again, I look at Sioux Falls and I think of, the 229 bypass there, and then kind of now I guess it's the Veterans Park Beltway that's under construction right now. So we're starting to look at some of the transportation issues. I think at some point in time we'll look at what's the next loop on the west side of town and those types of things. How do we connect us on the west side of town? So again, maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly I think that's something they need to look at.
Yeah, I'll probably be alive still, so it'll be interesting to see. So to go back, we talked about if a person was to move here. What about a company? I know you work a lot with commercial businesses. Like if a company were to move here, why would they want to move to Sioux Falls?
Sure. Well, I think, along different lines other than quality of life, because that's important in their move too. But I think we look at the tax structure of the state is a big one for us. The fact that we have available land, and it's not real expensive land compared to some of the other parts of the country. I think power is another one. We have ample power here. That's, again, relatively inexpensive. I think we have, our business incentives are good as a community and as a state. And I think we also, when you look at our work ethic here in the Midwest, I mean, Sioux Falls exemplifies that. And so when they look at workers, they know they're going to come to work every day ready to work. And that's, again, I think one of the reasons why we have such a low unemployment rate.
Yeah, I was going to say.
People want to work. They don't mind working. And so we're able to continue to bring people here to do that.
Cool. I know we talked about a lot. Wow. My head's exploding. Like I could ask you a million more questions, but I feel like we have only a limited amount of time, right? Yeah. So, what would you say is one of, like, if you were going to add something to Sioux Falls? I asked the mayor this, I try to ask most guests this, but if budget wasn't an issue, what would be like the top 3 things that you would add to the city, even though it's awesome already? Yeah.
Well, one of the things I would look at is what we're now labeling as workforce housing.
Okay.
Our housing market has exploded, and we're missing the middle. So that place between 250 and 400,000, we need to somehow get our young professionals into those types of houses and things like that. So that's one area I would hope that we could improve upon. I would also look at our airport. You mentioned it earlier. I think we need to expand our airport. We need to become more of a national hub in the Midwest for that. And thirdly, I would just hope that we would continue to invest in our quality of life. That's a key issue in bringing families here to this region. And one of the things I didn't talk about here today was our role in developing workforce. And so in your podcast, I appreciate it because we're looking to help people move here. We're looking to continue to grow and expand to fill that labor force. So
for sure,
if any of your listeners are willing and able to come to Sioux Falls, we'd love to have you.
Hey, we'll take them. I would love to have everyone just come from whoever's listening. So yeah, that would be great.
And they've got some temporary housing that they could use, right?
Yeah. I mean, hey, come stay at a Sodax Days place. It's on our website, sodaxdays.com. So make it super easy if you want to just like at least visit and experience Sioux Falls. You kind of get to know a little bit about what Bob is talking about. So cool. Why don't we end by just telling us like what is like the best place you visited in Sioux Falls or in South Dakota? Like where is it like, hey, I love to go to, like, it could be like the Palisades or like, and like give us kind of your reason, like why. I know you've been all over the world. So
Well, in the area, Sioux Falls area, I love to go. I love to go to Great Bear. They got
Okay.
some great hiking trails out there, and so I have a dog, so I usually go out there with my
Nice.
dog and do that. We go out to Good Earth State Park and do the
Okay.
same thing out there. So I like the outdoors. So I'm kind of an outdoor guy.
Yeah. Have you been to the Arboretum?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, very
Gotcha.
nice. Very nice. Inside, I mean, the pavilion is just a gem. We
Yeah.
love going to the pavilion for some of the shows and stuff that they have there. Outdoor, the Levitt
Yep.
Pavilion, again, another great opportunity to kind of be outside and enjoy. And I really enjoy being downtown
Yeah.
Sioux Falls. We have a lot of fun down there and so much to do and see. And so we'd love to do that. And in South Dakota, who doesn't like to go to the Black Hills and spend some time out there? Right?
Hey, I 100% agree with that statement.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, live in the city life a little bit, go over 5 hours to the wilderness as
Yep.
it is. So you brought up a good point about Great Bear. Like, I didn't know this for like the first 2-3 years I lived in Sioux Falls, but like Great Bear is a hidden gem in the summer of like those hiking trails.
It
Like
is,
you would have
yeah.
never guessed it,
Right.
because everyone just thinks like, oh, it's for,
Yeah, it's a
snowboarding
ski
and
slope,
skiing.
right? Yeah.
And so, but yeah, Bob, I appreciate you coming on
Yeah.
from the Development Foundation. Is there a place that people can find you, whether it's through a website or the social medias? Is it like Sioux Falls Development Foundation or?
Yep, it's SiouxFallsDevelopment.com.
Okay.
Is our website, and you can get anywhere from there on our social media sites. Again, happy to answer any questions that you have, provide any information that you would need. And
Perfect.
if you've got a business that's looking to move to South Dakota or Sioux Falls, please give us a call.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Move to Sioux Falls. Don't forget to follow and subscribe at Move to Sioux Falls for the latest content, and we'll see you next time.